Hello everyone and welcome to the Coding Amateur. In this video we're going to install React Router and Directus. Before us is a blank slate. The only thing I have configured so far is my parent directory in VS Code. So you can go ahead and set up your parent directory, and inside this parent directory we're going to install React Router and Directus. So let's jump to the docs. We're going to install React Router first. We're going to go to Google and we're going to look for React Router. All right. And let's go to the official documentation. Let's click on docs. And we notice already that there are two options in installing React Router. So we can install React Router as a library and React Router as a framework. What's the difference? So when we look at the description of React Router as a library, we see that it's just a simple declarative routing library. In other words, it creates the routes that allow us to navigate from one page to the next, like a main menu on a website. You click the link and you move from the About page to the Contact page or to the Products page. All right, so that's React Router as a library. But for this tutorial, we're going to need much more features than just a simple declarative routing library. And for that, we are going to jump to the React Router as a framework, because what this offers us is the full stack development experience. And that's what we want, because we want to build a full stack app. So we're going to be using React Router as a framework, and it comes with a lot of features that's going to make it quite easy in doing what we want. So we're going to install React Router as a framework. So let's jump to the installation. So we're going to copy this command and we're going to go to our terminal and we're going to paste it here and we're going to hit enter. And it's going to use the default template. It's asking us if we want to initialize a new Git repository. We're going to say yes. Install dependencies with npm. Now I am using npm on my machine. You may be using yarn or pnpm. If that's the case, then click no. But if you click no, the installation will skip this step. And when it is completed, you'll have to manually install your dependencies using whichever package manager of your choice. All right. But for my installation, I use npm, so I'm going to click yes. And it's going to install all my dependencies. Now, depending on the machine that you're on, it may take a short time or it may take a little time. So this may take a little while, so I'm just going to jump ahead and we'll come back when it's done. Okay, so it's done. We can see that in the parent directory, it created our React Router as a framework. So it created the framework for us. We're going to see that we have all the files and folders needed to get our app running. I'm not going to explain what we are seeing just yet, as you know, if we go into the app folder, we're going to see some files that are essential. When we come to developing the app and the examples that we are going to use, I will then explain each file and folder in greater detail. However, one thing I just want to highlight is that you will notice we have a tailwind.config.ts file. Now, we did not install Tailwind, but in this default template, Tailwind was pre-configured for us, so we don't have to install it manually, and that's a plus. I love Tailwind. Not all developers like Tailwind, but I find it's a very handy utility, and I use it a lot, and I think it's a great utility. And if we go to our app.css file, you'll see that we already have the Tailwind directives already installed here. Okay, so we don't need to do anything as far as installing Tailwind. That was done for us. So I consider that to be a plus. All right, you'll also notice that by default it uses TypeScript. You will notice the TS and TSX file. If you're new to TypeScript, this is not a TypeScript tutorial, but I will help you walk through the configuration of the files using TypeScript. Okay, so don't worry about it. With React Router installed, we will now install Directus. Let's go to the docs. Okay, so there are two ways to host Directus. The first way you can host Directus is by purchasing a plan on Directus Cloud. And we have the starter plan at $15 per month bill annually and $20 a month bill monthly. So you can choose whichever plan is more suitable for your needs. To see the different features, you can scroll down and look at them. We are not going to go into the features of cloud hosting. In fact, we are going to be looking at the self-hosted option. So we will click Developers, then Directus Docs. Then we will scroll down to self-hosted and we will click on Docker Guide. So as the name suggests, we will be using a Docker container to run Directus locally on our machine. In order to do this, I install Docker Desktop. So we will go to the Docker website. And you can, once you hover on Docker, download Docker Desktop, you will click on the download that is applicable to you. In my case, I use Mac with an Intel chip. You could use whatever your machine would require. Now, I'm not going to install it because I already have it installed. So I'm going to show you my installation that is already running. Okay, so this is Docker Desktop, and you would observe that I already have two containers installed. Once we click the start button, it would spin up the containers and Directus would be running. Of course, we will go through the process and you will see how to install it on your machine using Docker Desktop. So go ahead, download Docker Desktop and install it, and then when you're finished doing that, come back to the Docker Guide. And once here, we'll need to copy the config that will get our container created. So we're going to be using Docker Compose, and this file is all we need to get started. So what we will do, we will go back to VS Code in your parent directory, and we're going to create a folder and we're going to name it, well, you can name it whatever you want. I am going to name it my Directus backend. Right? And inside of this folder, I'm going to create a docker-compose.yml or YAML file. What I'm going to do is go back to Directus Docs, copy this file, which is the Docker Compose, and I'm going to paste it into the file that I just created. I'm going to delete this version.3. If you don't, it will bring up an error. Not that it will stop the installation, but it's just a little annoying. So I'm just going to delete that. I'm going to save it. One thing to note, you can upgrade the version of Directus you're running by just changing the version number here. So right now we are running 11.3.5. If they release 11.4, you would just come and replace this with 11.4. Save and then run Docker Compose. All right, so let us now go to the directory we just created. So cd into my Directus backend, hit enter, and we're going to run the command docker compose up. This may take a while depending on the machine that you have. So once this is completed, I'm going to jump back in. Okay, so now that our container has been created, let us open up our Directus backend. So I'm going to click on this link. It's going to ask me to open an external website, and I'm going to say yes, and we're going to go to our Directus backend, and here is our Directus backend. Now, when we created the container, we would have added a user to it, and if you go back to your Docker Compose file, you're going to see that you have a user, an admin user with password. So we're going to add this email as our admin email, and this is the password. So I already have it saved, so I'm going to click and I'm going to enter it, and let's get into our Docker instance, or Directus, instance. Nice, and we are inside of our back end. All right, so we have no collections at the moment. I'm going to explain what collections are. We have one user, which is the admin user that was pre-configured when we created the container. We have a file library which would contain any files that we would want to render on the front end, or maybe files for downloading. We have insights which we will not go into at this present time, but as we progress through the app, we will definitely look at those. And this here is the documentation. If you click on this, it will then take you to Directus documentation, which we already have open, so no need to go there. And we have our settings panel. And in our settings panel is where we would configure our collections and our access policies, which is very important in accessing our APIs. We also have the settings panel, and this allows us to configure or to customize Directus to our preferences or whatever our needs are. So you can change the name. So for instance, instead of just Directus, I could name it My Directus, and once I click save, it changes up here to My Directus. So you can customize it as you want. If we go to appearance, we can change the color as well. So if I change the color here and I click save, you will see everything changes to suit the color. I just changed that color there for so that we could see what it does, but I'm going to change that back. Right, I prefer the blue, so I'll change it back. You could change the logo and you could customize it as you want. I'm not going to go into the branding aspect of it. Directus does have a YouTube video showing you how to customize this. I'm going to put a link in the description so that you can go and check it out. And I think they did a great job at explaining all of this. So you can go there and learn how to customize your instance of Directus better. But for now, we want to focus more on the functionality of Directus as a backend. So now that our backend is up, we're going to look at connecting the front end to the backend, creating collections, and then accessing those collections from the front end. So we're going to do that in the next video.